April the 9th. Going called, bringing with him an invitation for Carrie and myself to a ball given by the East Acton Rifle Brigade, which he thought would be a swell affair. We accepted of his kindness, and he stayed to supper. We had a very pleasant game of cards, though I lost 4 shillings, and Carrie lost 1, and Going said he'd lost about 6pence. How he could have lost, considering that Carrie and I were the only other players, remains a mystery. April the 16th. The night of the East Acton Volunteer Ball. On my advice, Carrie put on the same dress that she'd looked so beautiful in at the Mansion House, for it had occurred to me, being a military ball, that Mr. Perkup, who I believe is an officer in the Honourable Artillery Company, would in all probability be present. Lupin, in his usual incomprehensible language, remarked that he had heard it was a bounder's ball. I didn't ask him what he meant, though I didn't understand. Where he gets these expressions from, I don't know. He certainly doesn't learn them at home. The invitation was for 8:30, so I concluded that if we arrived an hour later, we should be in good time without being unfashionable, as Mrs. James says. It was very difficult to find, the cabman having to get down several times to inquire at different public houses where the drill hall was. However, after going up and down a good many badly lighted streets, we arrived at our destination. I had no idea it was so far from Holloway. I gave the cabman 5 shillings, who only grumbled, saying it was dirt cheap at half a sovereign, and was impertinent enough to advise me the next time I went to a ball to take a bus. Captain Welcott received us, saying we were rather late, but that it was better late than never. He seemed a very good-looking gentleman, though, as Carrie remarked, rather short for an officer. He begged to be excused for leaving us, as he was engaged for a dance, and hoped we should make ourselves at home. Carrie took my arm, and we walked round the rooms 2 or 3 times and watched the people dancing. I couldn't find a single person I knew, but attributed it to most of them being in uniform. As we were entering the supper-room, I received a slap on the shoulder, followed by a welcome shake of the hand. I said, "Mr. Padge, I believe." He replied, "That's right." I gave Carrie a chair, and seated by her was a lady who made herself at home with Carrie at once. There was a very liberal repast on the tables, plenty of champagne, claret, etc., and, in fact, everything seemed to be done regardless of expense. Mr. Padge is a man that I admit I have no particular liking for, but I felt so glad to come across someone I knew that I asked him to sit at our table. And I must say that for a short, fat man, he looked well in uniform, although I think his tunic was rather baggy at the back. It was the only supper-room that I have been in that was not overcrowded. In fact, we were the only people there, everybody being so busy dancing. I assisted Carrie and her newly formed acquaintance, who said her name was Lupkin, to some champagne, also myself, and handed the bottle to Mr. Padge to do likewise, saying, "You must look after yourself." He replied, "That's right," and poured out half a tumbler and drank Carrie's health, coupled, as he said, with her "worthy lord and master." We all had some splendid pigeon pie, and ices to follow. The waiters were very attentive and asked if we would like some more wine. I assisted Carrie and her friend and Mr. Padge, also some people who had just come from the dancing room, who were very civil. It occurred to me at the time that perhaps some of the gentlemen knew me in the city, as they were so polite. The band struck up for the dance, and they all went into the ballroom. The ladies, Carrie and Mrs. Lupkin, were anxious to see the dancing, and as I had not quite finished my supper, Mr. Padge offered his arms to them and escorted them to the ballroom, telling me to follow. I said to Mr. Padge, "It is quite a West End affair," to which remark Mr. Padge replied, "That's right." When I had quite finished my supper and was leaving, the waiter who had been attending on us arrested my attention by tapping me on the shoulder. I thought it unusual for a waiter at a private ball to expect a tip, but nevertheless gave a shilling, as he'd been very attentive. He smilingly replied, "I beg your pardon, sir. This is no good," alluding to the shilling. "Your parties had 4 suppers at 5 shillings a head, 5 ices at 1 shilling, 3 bottles of champagne at 11 and 6, a glass of claret, and a 6-penny cigar for the stout gentleman. In all, £3 and 6pence. I don't think I was ever so surprised in my life. and had only sufficient breath to inform him that I had received a private invitation, to which he answered that he was perfectly well aware of that, but that the invitation didn't include eatables and drinkables. Of course, there was nothing to be done but to pay. So after turning up my pockets, I'd just managed to scrape up sufficient, all but 9 shillings. But the manager, on giving my card to him, said, "That's all right." I don't think I ever felt more humiliated in my life, and I determined to keep this misfortune from Carrie, for it would entirely destroy the pleasant evening she was enjoying. I felt there was no more enjoyment for me that evening, and it being late, I sought Carrie. She said she was quite ready to go. When we got outside the drill hall, it was raining so hard that the roads resembled canals, and I need hardly say we had great difficulty in getting a cabman to take us to Holloway. After waiting a bit, a man said that he would drive us anyhow as far as the Angel at Islington, and we could easily get another cab from there. It was a tedious journey. The rain was beating against the windows and trickling down the inside of the cab. When we arrived at the Angel, the horse seemed tired out. Carrie got out and ran into a doorway, and when I came to pay, to my absolute horror, I remembered I had no money, nor had Carrie. I explained to the cabman how we were situated. Never in my life have I been so insulted. The cabman, who was a rough bully, and to my thinking not sober, called me every name he could lay his tongue to, and positively seized me by the beard, which he pulled till the tears came into my eyes. I took the number of a policeman who witnessed the assault for not taking the man in charge. The policeman said he couldn't interfere, that he'd seen no assault, and the people should not ride in cabs without money. We had to walk home in the pouring rain, nearly 2 miles. And when I got in, I put down the conversation I'd had with the cabman word for word, as I intend writing to the Telegraph for the purpose of proposing that cabs should be driven only by men under government control, to prevent civilians being subjected to the disgraceful insult and outrage that I had had to endure.